According to the Forensic Outreach Team, a team composed of CIA analysts, former FBI officials, as well as law enforcement officers, for the purpose of educating and informing the public about the human mind and the various acts that have been committed throughout history, on their website, updated in 2018, John Gacy Jr., throughout his entire life in Illinois, was abused by his father, John Gacy Sr., by being whipped with a belt and called various slurs such as sissy and queer. Little did John Gacy Sr. know that his slurs and his physical abuse would have drastic impacts on his young son's entire life and many other people in the neighborhood. We've all seen a movie or a TV show that features some kind of cold-blooded, psychopathic human killer, but people never stop and think about what made them the way they are. There is a strong connection between childhood traumas and psychopathic human tendencies. And today I will be discussing how physical and mental abuse has an effect on the brain, as well as various signs that a child might be exhibiting psychopathic behavior and ways to prevent them from doing so, and ways to prevent them from even showing those signs in the first place. To begin, I will be discussing the effects that abuse has on the brain, especially the developing brain of a young child. There are two main types of abuse: physical and mental. First, I will be touching on physical abuse. Physical abuse can lead children to develop strange dependencies on certain people and on certain parts of the body, as well as commit deviant sexual acts in the future. For example, John Gacy, as I mentioned earlier in the story, had strange images of masculinity pushed upon him by his father, as his father was always telling him to be a man and would whip him and beat him, leading him to believe that the only way to be a man and to make other people be a man is to inflict pain upon them. So that is what he did his entire life. In another instance, according to Rebecca LeBrode, a researcher published in the Brief Treatment and Crisis Intervention Report, in her report, The Etiology of the Psychopathic Serial Killer, published in 2007, serial killer Ed Gein was repeatedly forced into strange and unusual punishments by his incredibly religious and, in his eyes, proper, upstanding mother. These included holding his hand above an open flame for extended periods of time. Thus, as an adult, he had a strange relationship with other women, and anyone that wasn't as moral and upstanding as his mother was in his eyes was subject to those strange, torturous punishments by him. Next, I will touch on the effect that mental abuse has on a young child's brain. According to David Hosier, a psychology teacher and researcher, as well as a childhood trauma survivor, in his blog on childhood trauma in 2013, he says that abandonment can have severe impacts on a child's developing brain, and it leads to some parts of their brain becoming underdeveloped, especially those that function emotion, which is why many psychopaths tend to not have any emotion or feel anything at all. Verbal abuse can also lead children into moving towards risky behavior and violent behavior to themselves or to others, and it causes them to develop a complete lack of empathy for other human beings and other lives. Now that I've discussed some of the ways that abuse can affect a child's mind, I will move on to some of the signs that your child or children around you may be developing these violent tendencies. According to David Hosier, in another article on his website titled Possible Childhood Characteristics of Killers, published in 2014, there are many, many signs that you can look for when your child is at risk for becoming a psychopathic killer. Some signs are obvious, such as love of weapons or hurting animals or becoming a voyeur. However, some signs are less obvious, such as wetting the bed for long periods of time or head injuries that aren't visible to the outside world. And now I will discuss some ways that you can help children who are developing these kind of violent behaviors. On an NPR podcast called All Things Considered, they interviewed Barbara Haggerty, a psychology writer, in 2017. And she worked at an institution where children who exhibited violent behaviors stayed for long periods of time. And she said that the best way to reach out to them is to give them rewards rather than punishments, and tell them, if you stay within the lines of the law and respect other lives, you will have a better life and you will be rewarded. And according to Luke Hyde, the assistant professor of psychology at the University of Michigan, in a study published in the British Journal of Psychiatry in 2016, Positive parenting methods can prevent children from exhibiting violent behaviors to begin with. Even if a parent feels the need to punish a child, they should not do it in such an extreme and physical way. To conclude, I have showed you the effects that abuse can have on a child's brain, as well as the signs and treatments for children who are already suffering from these horrible conditions. There is a strong connection between childhood trauma and violent psychopathic behaviors as an adult. Remember John from the beginning of the story? Well, as an adult, he murdered 33 young boys and raped them in his hometown in Illinois. And throughout the entire time, while he was strangling them, he would say the same things to them that his father said to him. Don't be a sissy, be a man, and push through the pain.